Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Jacqueline Westman and I am the Executive Director of the Union. Thank you all for being here tonight. First, I want to start with a heartfelt thank you to Melissa and the entire staff of the Park City Library for hosting us tonight and assisting us throughout the past couple of days. And all of the incredible partner organizations that are out in the community fair that you all visited on your way to the auditorium. And especially to all of our incredible volunteers for their support this evening and our staff members. Let me quickly tell you a little bit about who we are. The Union is a growing coalition of Americans committed to rebuilding our democracy from the ground up. Our core foundation is that we believe that showing up matters in every town, in every community, every county, and every state. We're working to ensure that decent, competent leaders, regardless of party, have the community support they need. We do this by organizing, listening, and by building the infrastructure that has been missing and in many cases completely non-existent for far too long. In just the past few months, our volunteers have hosted community meet and greets nationwide, registered voters, held coffee meetups, and helped local candidates engage in conversations with their neighbors. And we're just getting started. Our goal is to build a 50-state infrastructure because the work doesn't stop after one election. And each state is so unique to its kind. It's about staying active, doing the work, and earning the voters' trust and being in it for the long haul. Tonight we're joined by 3 leaders who exemplify what it means to show up, speak out, and stay the course. Former Representative Adam Kinzinger, who stood up for truth when it mattered the most, and Caroline Gleick, an advocate and former U.S. Senate candidate right here in Park City, and Reed Galen, co-founder of the Lincoln Project and the president of the Union. This town hall is about honest conversation. It's about bridging divides, focusing on what connects us, and leaving here with a clear sense of what we can do next. Thank you all for being part of it, and it is now my pleasure to introduce you to Caroline Gleick.
Thank you. Good evening, Park City. Okay, just a quick show of hands. How many of you are appreciating the return of third winter today? Okay, I got a couple of runs in today, hiking out that little strip of snow that's remaining. I'm Caroline Gleick. I'm a ski mountaineer, environmental advocate, and last year, your candidate for United States Senate. I want to start by giving a huge shout out to the local organizations that are here tonight. League of Women Voters, Better Boundaries, Peace House, Ignite Utah, Stewardship Utah, among many others. You are the heartbeat of our democracy. And thank you for everything you do to keep our communities strong and ensure that our voices are heard. When I ran for Senate last year, I experienced just how punishing and personal politics can be, especially when you're a woman or a political outsider or someone who challenges the status quo. But I also saw how powerful it is when we step up, not because it's easy, but because we care. And since my campaign ended, I've heard from countless other people, young people, working class folks, unlikely candidates who don't come from political dynasties or wealth. And they've either filed to run, they're planning to run, or one of my friends just won her seat in Colorado. With my list, even though we didn't flip the seats, we still reached millions of people. We gave voice and hope for 500,000 Utahns, and we are not stopping. We're going to keep showing up. And running for Senate, it really gave me a deeper appreciation for the democratic institutions that we too often take for granted. And in my journey as a skier and a mountaineer, I've had the privilege of traveling to places where democracy is fragile, hanging on by a thread, or other places where it's completely gone and non-existent. For example, I spent over 70 days in Tibet across 2 Himalayan expeditions. And on our first trip there, we had a government liaison traveling with us at all times. But the first one we had was a young woman. She learned to speak several languages fluently, and she dreamed of one day working in global tourism. But because she was born Tibetan, under the Chinese Communist Party rule, she may never be allowed to leave Tibet. Tibetans are denied passports. They're denied freedom of movement. They're denied a voice and a dream. And even there, flying a Tibetan flag, a symbol of their cultural identity, is illegal. And if you do it, you will face brutal imprisonment. And just last week, here in Utah, our own government enacted a ban on pride flags in public schools and on government property. And it might seem like a small thing to some people, but history shows that authoritarianism rarely begins with violence. It begins with censorship, with erasure, with silencing the symbols and stories of people you'd rather not see. Democracy depends on visibility, on inclusion, on the freedom to be who you are, and to show up fully and unapologetically in your community. And that's why we're here tonight, to remind ourselves and one another that the work of protecting democracy isn't someone else's job, it's ours. Utah's a really special state. You know, we hear about the Utah way, and as Utahns, we care deeply about freedom, about fairness, about family, and the legacy we leave for future generations. But we can't protect those values if we stay silent while democracy is under attack. And whether that's gerrymandered maps silencing our voices, vote bans, threats to our public lands, or the normalization of political violence. We have to keep showing up. We have to keep organizing. We have to continue building unlikely coalitions. And that brings me to tonight's guests, 2 people who come from very different political backgrounds, but who share a deep commitment to truth, integrity, accountability, and country over party. One is a former congressman who cast one of the most courageous votes in modern history. He was among a handful of Republicans who broke from his party to vote in favor of impeaching Donald Trump. The other is a Republican strategist who helped build one of the loudest national voices against authoritarianism. And please join me in giving a warm Utah welcome to Congressman Adam Kinzinger and union co-founder Galen.
Thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you. It's very nice. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's good to be back in Utah, by the way. I was here skiing a month ago, so it's nice to be back.
Well, you got snow again, so. Well, listen, everybody, thank you so much for coming. This is an incredible crowd. You guys filled every seat, and I could not be more flattered and humbled. And thank you, Adam, for joining me tonight. I'm so excited to see so many of you. I know so many of you. So many of you have been at our home. Is my wife Lindsay here somewhere? Lindsay, are you here? Did she make it? Oh, she's back there. Lindsay, stand up and say hello. All right, my wife Lindsay's back there. Thank you for playing around. The girls are at home. I also want to thank Caroline for introducing her and for the great race that she ran last year. So thank you, Caroline. I I'd like to thank the great folks here at the Park City Library. As you all know, this is just an incredible facility. I'm sure all of you have been here for events like this and for movies and everything else. Also, the Park City Police Department and Sheriff Smith, who helped make the connection for us. Obviously, Jacqueline, who you met earlier, Amy, Stacy, Matthew, Ryan, Tracy, all of our volunteers and community partners. Thank you so much for all you've done. This would not have happened without you, so thank you so much. Just give you, I'll give you 2 seconds before we get to work here. So the union started back in 2022 under the Lincoln Project, and it was the idea that we have lots of people and we could help project that kind of attention and political power into the states on behalf of democracy. Jacqueline has basically run this thing by herself for 3 years. In that time, she's recruited 75,000 volunteers, 100 plus partner organizations, knocked on more doors, registered more voters, made more phone calls, sent more texts. So thank you, Jacqueline, for all you've done. Without further ado, we will get started.
Good. Hey.
All right, so I'm just going to give everybody a brief background for you because if I read your whole bio, it would be 8 o'clock. So Adam was a member of Congress from Illinois from 2011 to 2023.
We got some Illinoisans in here. All right.
There's like 8 people who are actually from here.
We'll take it, man. We'll take it.
You just recently retired Lieutenant Colonel in the Air National Guard. You started flying KC-135 tankers, and I didn't realize this till I read your bio. You flew RC-26 surveillance planes, too.
Most of my time, yeah.
Okay, great. And served both in Iraq and Afghanistan, and obviously, most people might have known you from the January 6th committee hearings. So now you're a CNN contributor, man about town, new Texan. So how's Texas treating you?
Texas is hot. So I live north of Houston in the Woodlands, and I've met a few people that are from the Woodlands already. So, you know, we're representing, but it's great, it's hot, and I left today, it was 90, and it was actually really nice to land here when it was a little chilly, so I miss the cold.
So, you know, it's been a couple of years since you left office. Now, am I right in saying that they redistricted you out of an office, out of a district?
Yeah, they did, and at the same time, I don't think I would have run again anyway. So I actually had considered, in fact, the term prior, not running again. Arthur Brooks is a friend of mine, you know, from AEI, and he used to tell me you can do something really good and passionately for 10 years, and then you either have to rediscover your passion or do something else. And so, but I decided to run again. I'm glad I did, obviously. But yeah, I was redistricted out. I could have run again, and I would have lost in a primary by far.
Right, and I guess that's the question is, you know, in the 2 years as you look back. Now let me ask you, let me back up. You got elected in 2010. Were you a Tea Party guy, or were you a pretty standard Illinois Republican?
So I was a standard Illinois Republican, but at the time, in 2010, the Tea Party was basically just Republicans. Right. And then in 2012, actually after 2010, when we took the majority in the House, that's when the Tea Party actually got even further crazier. So it was initially just started as a bunch of people that wanted to win the House for the Republicans. So within, literally I was elected, and before I was even sworn in, I was already at war with the Tea Party because I did not go to their congressional orientation that they threw for us. And so I was already a rhino. So it didn't last very long.
Yeah, well, I mean, having to wear hoods and spend time in basements.
Yeah, I know.
It's not the way you want to spend time.
It's a good point, yeah.
So let's talk about it. So obviously you're in office 2016. You make it very clear that you're not going to support the nominee of your party, not surprisingly. And then you go into 2017, 2018, you go through 2020, and then obviously January 6th. So tell us a little bit about your experience on that day. You've talked about it extensively, but I think there are probably a lot of folks who don't know exactly what it was like to be at the Capitol that day.
Listen, so the thing I actually wanted to be known about when my career was over was like foreign policy. That's my passion. I wanted to be known for like the defense of democracy overseas, not necessarily saying through military power, but through NGOs, stuff like that. And so the one thing I know is that when you destabilize an election system, so if you convince people that elections are rigged and they're not rigged, that's the fastest way to kill democracy. Because the only thing we need for a democracy to survive, I mean, none of us in here have to agree on a thing, But the only thing we have to agree on is that there's a basic contract that you get to vote, the vote counts, the winner wins. That's it. When you start to destabilize that, that's a problem. So I was very outspoken the night when Donald Trump came out and said, frankly, they are stealing the election. Obviously, I became persona non grata over the next 3 months during that transition period. And then on January 1st, I'm on a call with all the Republican members of Congress, and I'm the first to talk. And I'm speaking to Kevin McCarthy, who at that time just revealed for the first time that he was also going to vote against certifying the election, which was unthinkable to me because leaders always took the quote-unquote tough votes or the right votes. So I said, Kevin, look, you have convinced half of our party at least that the election was stolen. There's going to be violence. Like, we come from a history in this country of like, we're going to overthrow the government if you oppress us. We did that in the revolution.
There's a whole amendment about it.
There's a whole amendment about it. And so he's very dismissive. I go, there's going to be violence on the 6th. He says, okay, Adam, whatever. Next caller. So on the 6th, I actually told my staff to stay home. My wife stayed in the apartment. And I went into work. I took my gun for the first time. We were actually allowed to take our gun to the Capitol as members of Congress. This was the first time I ever did it because I always felt safe and I didn't need to take it. So I take it in. I go to the floor when all this stuff's starting, all the counting of votes. And I start looking at my phone and I'm seeing already that they're breaching the perimeter.
Sure.
And so I make the decision and I tell a couple people around me, I'm like, you guys might want to get out of here and go back to your office. So by the time I go back to my office, I remember I'm going through this checkpoint. We don't have to go through security, but I see one of the ladies, one of the Capitol Police. She's just wide-eyed listening to her radio. And I said, as the weirdest thing I ever said, I go, has it started? I didn't even ask her what's happened. I go, like, has it started? And she said, yeah, they're using bear spray. So I get up, get into my office. Behind my desk is a big window that overlooks the west front of the Capitol where all the action was going on. And I opened that door, that window, and I hear boom, bang, pop, boom. And it was basically the moment that the DC Metro Police showed up and started using non-lethal. A lot of people don't know DC Metro showed up in force and actually saved the Capitol. The Capitol Police were having to retreat inside. And DC Metro was able to at least hold the line long enough to build a stronger interior perimeter. And that's what I was hearing. And I gotta tell you, I'm a Christian, I'm a religious person, but I've never in my life felt the presence of evil. So I'm not one of these people that's like, yeah, it's evil everywhere around the corner, right? I've never felt that. I did feel it at this moment, and I can't describe it besides to say, I stood up, I knew what was going on, and I just felt this darkness that I couldn't describe. Like this utter darkness. And I called my wife, talked to her, and the long and the short of it, I ended up having to, in essence, barricade myself in my office with my gun on my desk, actually entertaining the reality that I may have to kill Americans to save my life or be willing to sacrifice my life to not pull the trigger. And that's a very sobering thing to think about as a member of Congress. And so, yeah, it was a terrible day, and I'll just finish it with this. I go down, I give a speech on the floor of the House of Representatives where I say, the emperor has no clothes. And I remember thinking, of course the GOP is going to vomit this dude out, right? There's no way Donald Trump stays around. And after I gave my speech, I turn around and all the Republicans that are in the audience are just kind of like heads down.
Right.
And I'm like, son of a gun. And so I leave 3 o'clock in the morning. I see my first National Guard troops as a Guard soldier myself. I was very proud. I got kind of emotional. That was my day.
Well, I mean, I can tell you that, and I think this is sort of an analog for what we've seen in the last few months and everything else, is that if you're watching it on television and you're sitting there and you're like, what is going on, right? What is happening? And then it's almost like the video from the tsunami where you see people are like, why is all the water going away? And then it all starts rushing back. And then and it's one of those things like we're not programmed to see things that out of context, right? As humans, we're just not prepared for it. And then I got a text from a friend of mine who's over in Egypt, and he was in Tahrir Square. And he said, are you okay? And I said, I'm not. He said, the problem is once political violence enters the lexicon, it's very hard to get it out.
Yep.
It's very, very hard to get it out. And so now there's always that overhang of it. Will it happen again? And of course, now we've seen that they've been pardoned, they're held up as heroes among some. But you said that they hung their heads. There were some people there who, we were talking about Josh Hawley backstage, right? He's got the fist pump, and now he's trying to be Mr. Populist. and Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma. Now, let me just say one thing about Mark Wayne Mullen. This is a guy whose name was Mark Wayne Mullen. He's from Oklahoma. So when he ran for Senate, he made his first name Mark Wayne. He literally took the space out. If it gives you a sense of what a guy this is. Right? But he's hiding, right? They're all hiding. They're all scared for their own lives. But now, they'll do whatever. So tell me, do you have any contact with those guys or some of those people you serve with? And do they, I'll just say this. I'm sick of journalists giving these guys a pass. Well, behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Off the record, they say.
Well, look, I'm going to pile on to Mark Wayne for a second. So, he and I were friends in the house, and then after January 6th happens, he was, to his credit, he was ready to fight, which is extremely ironic now because he pretends like nothing happened. I told him that night about how I got that like evil feeling. I'm like, dude, I've never felt it. I felt it for the first time, and he goes, I was going around talking to all the police officers that were injured, and he said all of them told me the same thing, that they just felt a presence of evil. And this is Mark Wayne Mullen that said that is now out there defending Donald Trump. Look, here's what I've come to believe. We always wonder, and I'm not comparing this to Nazism, but I think it's an important point, is like, we always wonder, how does a farmer end up in a guard tower in Auschwitz, right? It doesn't happen all at once. It happens, right. You have to convince yourself that you're doing the right thing. And so in this case, these people, every one of these people, with one exception maybe, knew that what Donald Trump did was try to overthrow the government, and they knew it was wrong. Half of them didn't have the courage to say it, half of them did, and that courage only lasted a couple weeks until Kevin McCarthy went to Mar-a-Lago and literally, well not literally, figuratively, was like the ambulance driver that took the little heart things and brought Donald Trump
we don't
to
know
life.
what he did on camera.
Well, that's true. That's true.
And look, as someone who knew McCarthy in California, that he ended up how he did is not at all a surprise.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you were in Congress long enough to know, when the only reason McCarthy was ever in leadership was because he could raise money.
Yeah.
He was a terrible whip. He was a terrible leader. And he was, for the brief time he was speaker, he was a terrible speaker. He had to sell out everything. It's funny, my dad, of all people, worked for Newt, right? And that when people came for Gingrich, right, there was hell to pay, right? He didn't put up with any of that. And McCarthy went in as a jellyfish on day one.
And let me add to that. What's the point? Like, okay, Kevin McCarthy now has the title speaker for the rest of his life. Awesome. 8 months. Good job, dude. But speaker. And it's like, same to all of my colleagues, is like, and by the way, there were great Republicans, but they all either got beat or left. And there are no good Republicans left. I really mean that. They're not, because they're too complicit. They've been complicit to be where they are now. But like when I ran for Congress in 2010, I had just gotten back from Iraq. And I wear the name of Andreas O'Keefe on my wrist, who's a friend of mine that was killed in Iraq. And I remember thinking, if I'm going to run for Congress and I'm going to take a vote to send people to war, I'm kind of hawkish, right? I probably at some point will take a vote to send somebody to war for military action. If I'm willing to do that and ask young people to die for their country, which literally is the ultimate sacrifice, I have to be willing to give up a stupid career for the same thing, right? I thought it would be like some... I thought it would be like some hard vote I had to take. I didn't know it would be the defense of democracy. But the point is, when I see these members of Congress teary-eyed and saluting the flag-draped coffin as it comes in at Dover and telling about how great it is we have young people willing to die for the country, and then they go and vote the way they know is destructive to this country because they want to keep their job, screw them. They have no right to that job. They have no right to be called patriots.
So you mentioned foreign policy a couple of times, and as you noted, you were a pilot in the Air Force and served overseas a great deal, and you talk about that. So I want to ask one nerdy constitutional question,
okay.
And then I want to ask one more broader question, which is, Congress has the war-making authority, but we make war a lot. So do you think that, is it the Gulf of Tonkin? Is it Iraq? Is it Afghanistan? How did that get so far afield where those young men and women are being sent all over, right? Not at the Iraq had an authorization, but not declarations of war. So how do you bring that back to a place where there's balance, but also understanding that we are still the most powerful nation on earth, even if we don't act like it.
Yeah, I think the challenge in that is a couple of things. So, I think when the founding fathers were coming up with the Constitution, they had this idea that when it came to foreign policy, that there would not be a lot of division within Congress. There may be division like, should we go to war or not? But it wouldn't be based on a political party, right? And now it is based on a political. Let me give you an example. So I was very supportive of when Obama was going to bomb in Syria, and he didn't, and that was a big failure of his. But I was out there fighting for him to be able to do that. And Ted Cruz, Ted Cruz goes on TV and basically says he's not going to give authorization to do that because he doesn't trust Obama and Obama, blah, 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 political talking points. And I think that's how we got where we are, is like foreign policy and particularly military action is so important. And unfortunately, it can't be used for politics as so many people have. How do we get that back? We elect new people that actually take their power back in Congress. And when it comes to things like national defense, they don't incorporate it with their little stupid political ideology. It's about what is right for America, what is right for our mission. And I think we did that well through the Cold War, and then we got completely unmoored.
So I agree, but let me tell a quick Ted Cruz.
Good.
So I worked
He's
on
so stupid-faced. I mean, honestly.
And he's been that bad forever. So on the 2000 George W. Bush campaign, Ted Cruz was a lawyer. I don't know what he did. And at the end of every workday, someone was sent into Cruz's office to say, hey, Ted, where are you going tonight? And he said, I'm going to the back 40. And they would all go to the cloakroom. No one, 25 years ago, nobody wanted to hang out with us. Right? Like, this is not a new thing. And he's almost a neighbor of yours now.
Yeah, he is. Actually, I did a fundraiser for somebody in this last election cycle when Ted Cruz was up at a house 2 houses down from him. And I had a microphone. I'm like, wait, hopefully we'll beat Ted Cruz this year. Literally he's 2 houses away. It was awesome.
I mean, his neighbors don't like him. His kids don't like him. But it's not an unusual thing. I mean, he is the perfect example of what you're talking about. This is a guy who has done everything and been rewarded for it. I mean, you think about it, just to go back to January 6th and bring Cruz into it very briefly. Cruz called January 6th on the 1-year anniversary a riot. Yeah. He called it a riot. Tucker Carlson calls him on the carpet for it. Cruz goes on Carlson's show the next night and abases himself. No, it's not what I meant, Tucker. It's not what I meant, Tucker. And Carlson's just like, you're a constitutional lawyer, Ted. You know what you said, yada, yada, yada. And this is a guy, again, I think back to when, Trump is making fun of his wife.
Yeah.
Like, he should have socked the guy in the face.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a regular reaction from a normal human being. And he is literally, he's like Voldemort. He has no soul. And he's just like slithers around and somehow keeps his human suit on.
I bet he smells bad, but like, honestly, he just looks like it. I mean, come on. But honestly, if that would have happened, like, I would have expected, if Trump would have attacked my wife, and then I would have just been like, oh, thank you, like, I would have expected her to leave me, right? Like,
as well she should.
Yeah, she should. It's crazy.
And I do think that. I think back to the debate at the Reagan Library in the summer of 2015, when I think he made fun of Jeb's wife.
Yeah.
And Jeb just stood there not quite knowing what to do. And I think back to the guy I worked for, the other Bush brother. And George would have punched the guy in the face right then. And you could dislike him all you want, but that is not something he would have put up with. And it very well might have been the end of it. So, but all right, so let's get back to foreign policy. So one of the biggest things that we're contending with right now is the biggest land war in Europe since World War II. 3 years ago, 3+ years ago, Russia invades. We were doing a Zoom with Alex Vindman. And he said this to us, this was 2 or 3 days before the invasion. If Putin can't win quickly, he will flatten the country. If they can't have it, nobody can have it. Yeah. And now we've seen a situation where the United States, for 80 years, the leader of the country, and all of the things that has given to us and to individual citizens, now retreating from the world stage, playing footsie with Vladimir Putin, who, if you've seen in person, guys, he looks, talk about feeling evil. When you see him in person, that is definitely evil. So how do you see that now? I mean, do you think Europe can come to its own defense? Do you think Europe can come to Ukraine's defense?
So first off, not only do I think we're playing footsie with Russia, I think we've actually switched sides. I mean, it really feels like that. Now, look, there's sometimes green shoots. They're supposed to meet in Turkey. Maybe they don't, and then maybe there's new sanctions. But I still have yet to hear Donald Trump say a word about Vladimir Putin bad. I have yet to hear him say anything. And so, look, can Europe step up? Yes. Can they? Yes. Will they? I don't know. And now, here's why I say that. The bureaucracy in Europe, you think bureaucracy is bad in the United States? Double it in Europe. And the bureaucracy of that is like, now if they make decisions, you have to go through like Hungary. Hungary has a veto. Hungary, for instance, has just said that they're going to veto new sanctions against Russia. So Europe's trying to figure out how to go around Hungary, or at least put them out of this. And I think Europe is still under this. I have a lot of European friends that I actually, I'm on a Signal chat. We don't do anything classified there.
Is there anybody from the
I don't know. There's this Jeff guy on there, but anyway. But they are, and they're, look, they think like we do, right? They're the I would call them the Russian hawks of Europe. But they're still under this belief, this cloud, that somehow Donald Trump is really just kind of playing a game and really the United States is there. And I think Europe is not fully yet coming to grips with what this could mean. And so I'm concerned about it. And look, I will tell you, this war in Ukraine, to me, is literally the most important foreign policy thing to happen in the world, probably since World War II. Yeah. And on top of that, we are flushing the post-World War II order down the toilet. And here's the thing that a lot of people on the MAGA side don't understand or don't care. The post-World War II order was not built that way out of the kindness of our heart. We built that to benefit the United States of America. And in the benefiting the United States of America, more people are better off because I think we have good values. We have values of free market, stuff like that. But there's a reason the United States Navy has said to Europe, don't worry about the freedom of navigation of the seas, we'll take care of that, because we want to be in charge of the seas, and we can do that with the United States Navy, which makes that Signal chat where Hegstaff goes like, I hate the Europeans because they're not protecting the seas. And by the way, the Brits and French were there with us at the time he was texting that. But we can't expect them to because we told them not to. We said we will do that as the United States of America.
Right. Well, so
I'm yelling a lot, I'm sorry.
Let me take a step aside. I think that the Signal chat piece, I mean, I think it's very clear that, people are like, oh, these people are unqualified. Like, that's the point, right? The point is that these people are not qualified for their jobs. But on the Signal chat piece, and as somebody who's, flown in combat, when you're laying out in basically a text message what time F-18s are taking off from an aircraft carrier, there are real men and women in those cockpits. And there are real Houthi anti-aircraft missiles looking to shoot them down.
By the way, there's real Houthi anti-aircraft missiles that have shot down 8 Predator or Reaper drones to that point. And Reaper drones are not easy to shoot down, but they did it. Now, let's keep in mind, Steve Witkoff at the time claims he didn't have his personal cell phone with him. We have no way of knowing, but he was added to this Signal chat. He was in Russia. Now, we also know that Russia can exploit Signal because they used that to actually target Ukrainian troops on the front lines before Ukraine either had to put in a fix or basically tell their troops not to use Signal. So somehow the Russians can exploit that. So it's not unthinkable to think that they can read. You can't intercept Signal and read it, but if you have access to somebody's screen, you can read what's on it, and that's what a lot of this does. And so if the Russians got this, who were allied with the Houthis, by the way, and they sent that information, you now have aircraft coming. You know what the targets are going to be potentially because he laid out enough to make that clear. You know the timing, and you could put the anti-aircraft stuff in place to shoot down an F-18. Part of the reason our planes don't get shot down is because we know how to avoid anti-aircraft fire, or we know how to take out radars at the right time. It's not because we're invincible to anti-aircraft fire. We're just really good at being able to do suppression of enemy air defense. What the enemy knows where we're going to strike or win, we can't suppress that air defense, which means an American man or woman could have died in that.
Right. And I mean, I think Hegseth is everything we thought he would be.
Yeah.
And you know, look, if you've been to the Pentagon, right? Like it is, I think, maybe still the biggest office building in the world. It's got hundreds, tens of thousands of people working in it. It is a bureaucracy, even probably worse than the U.S. government bureaucracy writ large.
We all hate the Pentagon, just so you guys know. Military guys hate it.
Right.
It's necessary, but we hate it.
Right. And so that's one thing I think we see now is that, you know, not only are we pulling back from what have been our responsibilities for 80 years, now if you are the defense minister for a European nation and you're sitting across the table from this guy and his wife and whatever other goons they've chosen to bring to the conference, there's just no possible way you can have confidence that anything that's supposed to happen is going to happen.
No, and we already know our partners, including Five Eyes, which are our closest partners, Canada, New Zealand, United States, UK, Australia. All of those partners are actually holding back on some of the stuff they're sharing with us now, particularly when it comes to human assets. Because one of the things, when you read that signal chat, the fact that he knew that this guy was in the apartment building where his girlfriend was implies very strongly that there was a human source on the ground that would say that. And so anytime anything like that comes out, you compromise your sources, which is not just bad because they're going to go find that person and kill them. That's bad. But it's because how do you recruit another source in the future? Ever. If you're like, well, we're just going to sell you out anyway.
Well, and I mean, I guess that's the question too, but going back to some of, you know, our former party people. Like a guy that was one of my best friends for a long time is on that signal chat. Right, he was Mike Waltz's chief of staff. I don't know if he has a job anymore, to be honest with you. But like to me, like he knows better.
Yeah.
He knows better than all of this stuff. He was in Iraq for a year, right? He worked for Cheney. He was at some of the highest levels of this stuff. There's no possible way he doesn't know how wrong this is. Yet he has sold everything to be in that room.
Yeah, and Mike Waltz, a Green Beret, actually a really smart guy. He was very anti-Trump until he wasn't. And by the way, he became not anti-Trump when he got to ride on Air Force One. Literally went on to Air Force One, an enemy of Trump, came off a sycophant with a selfie. And that's God's honest truth. Because I was his friend. I'm like, what the hell?
We were lucky enough to have flown on that plane. Like the food, it's great, but the food is not that good.
Yeah, it's not that awesome.
The upholstery is old. I mean, I'm not saying we should buy a plane from Qatar. I'm just saying maybe we could have one built for ourselves.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, look, it's all, because what you notice, and I guess this goes to a broader point, when I get asked all the time, like, what happened to your colleagues? What happens? I mean, first off, again, it's been 10 years. So this hasn't actually been that rapid if you think about it. Trump's been in our life 10 years, which is frightening for somebody that's 22 years old that only knows this about American politics and not what we remember, where it used to actually be kind of a good sport, right? A fun thing. We used to enjoy it. We didn't yell at each other, that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I think that's the moment where I just lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
That's okay. I'll ask you another question and we'll go from there.
That was really, oh no, I got it, because I'm going to finish it real quick. People ask me what happened to your colleagues, and it's like, there is something intoxicating about going into the Oval Office. I've been in the Oval Office, and I will tell you, honestly, in person, Donald Trump is a charming person. He's funny. And so people go in there and like, he's a really nice guy. Look at what Bill Maher said the other day. He's the nicest guy in the world. Well, there's a lot of dictators that have really good personalities. Saddam Hussein was a nice guy in person too. That doesn't mean that you go and join their team, and too many people have fallen for that.
Right, and I think that's one other thing I think we should understand is that somebody asked a question at another event we were doing earlier is, you know, will these people come back? I don't have as much confidence. I think that there will be a time, hopefully sooner than later, that Donald Trump is off the political stage, but they will cease to be Trumpy and they will just be whatever's left of them. And I think that's one thing is, you know, the poison is run deep in a lot of these places. You know, the members of, you know, your conference, a lot of these legislatures, a lot of these governors, a lot of these statewide officials, like they are bought in, right? I mean, even here in Utah, right? They are bought in. The leadership throws MAGA just enough red meat, right, to sort of keep them sated, and then they go off and do whatever it is they're going to do. But they're happy to fight the culture wars. They're happy to restrict rights. They're happy to do all those other things. And so, yeah, so let's say Donald Trump does leave office January 20th, 2029. God bless. the fight I don't think is over.
No, it's just the beginning. And look, I think if we could quantum leap 30 years into the future, I think the Republican Party will be a normal party, because I think, in a country that's represented by two parties, it always has to kind of come to homeostasis in a way. And I don't think nationalistic and isolationist and movements based on fear and anger actually can last long. I mean, they'll last long to us, but in the grand scheme of history. But the question is, what's the damage between now and then?
Right.
So Donald Trump is uniquely capable of doing what he does. J.D. Vance can't do what Donald Trump does. Obviously Ron DeSantis can't, right? Nobody can. He's like uniquely shameless. And so there is a superpower.
Well, he also speaks the language natively.
Yeah, he does. He does. He speaks dumbassery. And, but so somebody's going to come and try to be that nationalistic person, and probably will succeed. But I think eventually, as the electorate turns against him, that will force him to come back. But listen, here's the other big thing. Just like you guys showing up here or doing the town halls and the protests, we've got to make, I'm speaking politically here, we've got to make our leaders fear us more than they fear Donald Trump. And that's the key.
Well, I think that's something that we were talking about backstage, and I talked to a lot of people. You referenced something, like it took us 10 years to get here. Now, the movement that helped propel him has been at work for a long time. Mm-hmm. And even working inside the party, I didn't really notice it. So it's going to take us a while to get out of it. And so that's the question is, people are like, well, what are we going to do now? Yeah. What do I do now? How do I fix it now? And that's for all of us who are used to being able to pick up this and literally order any product for the moment on Earth and have it show up tomorrow. The idea of, no, it's not going to end tomorrow. And it's not going to end next month. It's going to be years down the road before the stasis that you're talking about returns. And it takes a lot of trouble, work, and effort to get there.
So here's where we're at a little disadvantage. Chaos makes us tired, okay? Chaos energizes them, okay? So this is why we have to constantly be self-aware when we're feeling tired, when we're feeling depressed. Take time for yourself. By the way, guys, there is nothing wrong with being happy and laughing. There's nothing wrong with being with your family. Sometimes, and I fall for this too, if I go somewhere and I'm having a great time, I'm like, well, I'm having a great time and all this bad stuff's going on. Well, no, don't let them take your joy away. Actually, we're going to be way more powerful, joyful, because we can attract way more people that way. But we can be outraged at the same time. And so I think back to my grandfather, who stared down the Nazis in World War II, and could never talk about that. Never, we found out more about what he did after he died, and so many people have those same kind of stories. But I think about what that generation went through to defend our country. I think of the Vietnam generation and how they weren't even welcomed back home, but that sacrifice. I think of my generation, the post 9/11 generation, and like those sacrifices that so many have made at the cost of their lives, right? And so for 250 years of American history, this experiment has gone through some really bad times and really good times, but it's endured. And now that legacy is on our shoulders. It's on our generations now. I don't want this. None of us want this. We don't want to be the generation that has to fight this, but we are. And so the problem is it's going to take a while. It's going to take some courage. It's going to take us going through some low moments. Donald Trump may come after me. My response to him is bring it. Bring it. Okay? Come on. That'll make me 3 times more effective. Bring it. And that's how we have to look at this fight, I think. And someday, you got to keep in mind, the harder this is, the sweeter the victory will be. And that victory will come. I promise you that. But that doesn't mean it's not. So take that burden that you carry on your shoulders and just drop it. Stay engaged, but don't feel like the world rests on the next tweet. It doesn't rest on your outrage. It's all of us in this together. And it's not right against left. Let's get the right and left thing out of our heads until we have the ability to disagree in democracy again. This is supporting democracy.
Well, let me ask a question. Does anybody know who Jim Stockdale is? All right. How do you know who he is? He ran for vice president. Yes. The most famous thing he ever did was say, Who am I and why am I here? He was Ross Perot's vice presidential nominee in 1992. What you don't know is that he was an admiral in the Navy, and he was a Medal of Honor recipient, and he spent 7 years in the Hanoi Hilton. And he came up with something called Stockdale's Paradox, which is you must 100% understand the circumstances of your situation. You must not shy away from it. You must not sugarcoat it. This is bad, and it's going to be bad. But you must pair that with the idea that we will ultimately prevail, right? We have to hold both of those countervailing thoughts in our head together. And I know it's hard, but as Adam said, it is not upon us to stand in front of the fire hose all day, every day. That's not our job, and we're not better for it. And there's this expression out of the Talmud. It is upon us to start the work. It is not upon us to finish it. So, Adam, I want to say thank you. We're going to take some questions now, but thank you for coming. And Amy will be holding up the microphone. And let me just say this. Amy is a tiger with the microphone, so do not try to take it out of her hand, because it will work out badly. Anyone have a question? Or we'll just keep talking. All right, right here in the front, in the second row.
We're constantly hearing about corruption and
Oh, yeah.
not just the plane, but the coin and the club and on and on and on. But I feel very, and I'm sure other people do, feel very powerless. What can we do? This absolutely should not be happening.
Look, I'm writing about this a lot in my Substack plug, if you're not following me on Substack. And part of the problem is, you know, and this is what we were talking about, is like we are constantly writing about what's wrong, and and we need to. That's part of the embracing that. But with the corruption stuff, the best thing we can do is continue to call it out. Continue to call it out. And to my Democratic friends in office that may happen to see this, because I'm telling them this, get in front of the microphone and make it very clear to any country in the world that, say, houses American prisoners as an example, or that attempts to bribe the President of the United States, that they may get their way for the next 3.5 years, but there will be hell to pay when Democrats take over. Because that is how you put into the lexicon of, for instance, Qatar, that maybe we shouldn't give this free jet that Donald Trump is going to take and fly as part of his library, because we're thinking in 10-year increments and he's only going to be president for 3. I think that is so important. The Democrats, look, God bless them, but get louder, right? Go in front of the microphones and call this corruption out, and then threaten countries that are part of this with hell to pay in the future. I think that's the best thing we can do, and continue to make sure every American knows about the corruption, including this meme coin where Donald Trump invented millions of dollars out of thin air for himself.
Right, and remember that this is the guy who did a very good job of ironically enough, making himself a man who could feel the pain of the average American.
Yeah.
And he's clearly not. But look, you know what? He was the only one for a long time who was willing to say the system is screwing you, right? And a lot of people feel that way. And so, this is where we are. But I would also say, as I said earlier, those people who are most tied into him, don't care. There's nothing that he can do wrong.
Nope.
But I think this is the other part too is, and I've tried to tell our friends this as well, which is whether or not it's about corruption, whether or not it's about cuts to Medicaid, whether or not it's about what tariffs are going to do to either your 401k or small businesses, there are places you can and should go attack. And it is those former members, those members who are still in office, your former colleagues, who are in swing districts, who, as you said, the first thing they want to do is keep their job. Put them in a box canyon. Do you want to stand with Donald Trump, or do you want to make your voters angry? Make them make that choice. Yep. And these things are not complicated. A lot of this stuff, guys, is blocking and tackling. You just have to have the will to do it.
And I'm going to take 20 more seconds to say, at the very beginning, what should have happened. The second Doge started, okay, fake agency Doge, it's not real. The second it started, the Democrats, so they had the swearing in and all that, certification, and then everybody went home for 2 weeks. Doge was started, everybody was at home. Leader Jeffries respect him, but he should have called every Democrat back to DC, even though they were out of session. It's not fun when you're out of session. He should have called them back, and they should have been at every agency demanding entrance so that they can monitor what DOJ is doing, because they have oversight, and when they get rejected, they march down to the courthouse and get a court order to enter the building that they have oversight over. And that would have been a much better way to start the beginning of this year.
And we're gonna take more questions, but to that end, also, this is where like strategy matters, planning matters, which is you knew we got elected on November 5th. You had a pretty good idea, even if you didn't know what clowns were going to be in the circus, that there were going to be clowns at the circus, and you could have started on whenever these hearings started. You could have said, "I'm not letting any of these assholes through until and unless I get some." Idea of what they're going to do. And a lot of these guys did not survive by that much, right? And any sort of delay probably would have weakened resolve. Do I think we would have gotten somebody better? Do I think Pam Bondi is better than Matt Gaetz? I don't know. I guess that's sort of like, do I want leprosy or do I want gangrene? Like, I don't know. So anyway, all right, next question. Yes, ma'am. Oh, hold on one second. That's okay.
I'm wondering who is going to hold Trump accountable for all his unconstitutional actions?
My answer is hopefully the court system, and hopefully when Democrats take the majority. I don't think you can expect much beyond that right now, right?
No.
I mean, let's be honest.
No, and I think this is part of what Adam was talking about. There are going to be bad times. And part of the bad time is that he has not been held to account, and frankly, there's not a lot of mechanisms to do so. And that's one of those, again, that's just, you don't have to accept that it's right, you have to accept that it's reality and say, okay, if I can't help there, where can I help? All right, who's next? Amy?
Right here.
Oh, okay.
Hi. So as we're seeing that Congress is not responding to the typical calls from their constituents, and they're not doing their job, is it advisable for us to be doing more of like the Tesla takedowns, going after the business interests as they are supporting this illegitimate president? Or this president, he's not illegitimate, but he's taking actions that are illegitimate.
Look, I'll say this in terms of the pressure. It feels like it's not working. It's only been 120 days or so. The fact that there have been so many protests and so many of these. So keep in mind, the year of the Tea Party, and you had the town halls, that's kind of what started all that, right? And then it grew into this fire. That didn't start until August, basically, of the equivalent of this year. We've already got that happening now. I'm going to go speak at I don't know if I can announce this yet, so I'm going to speak at a protest somewhere. I can't announce where. Veterans related. Might be on June 6th, and it might be in DC. But I can't announce anything. But anyway, so that these things are having an impact, and that's why members aren't doing town halls. I did town halls, right? It was usually the far right that actually protested my town halls, but I hated it. They hate it too. So I think that pressure, it feels like it's not effective. It is, and it's only going to get more effective, and it's only going to, I think, increase the pain of these folks.
But and what I would say this is, I think it is. Someone asked a question about the big rallies that we're seeing from, say, Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And my feeling is, if 20,000 people, like did here in Salt Lake City, and Caroline introduced AOC, want to get together and express their displeasure, I think that's great. My question is, what are you doing with those people next, right? What are you doing? Are you making sure that you've taken them and sorted them by zip code or congressional district? Do you know where they live? Are you asking them to get involved in that next thing, whatever it is, a community event or yet another town hall? Because if it's just, well, I'm going to go speak on D-Day to a veterans event, that's great. But if it's not part of a larger thing that is building into something, like you said, which can catch fire, if that kindling isn't laid down, if it's just one more thing, this person does that, this group does that, this protest happens here, we have a Tesla takedown. If it's just little, shotgun pellets, then it won't congeal into what it needs to be.
And I'll say too, because I agree with that, and join the union, but also I'm going to pitch my side too real quick. Country First, country1st.com. We do something called Days of Action. And so people are calling their Congress per their congressional district, and we've made like we've had like 8,000 volunteers making these calls, similar to what the union has done. All of these organizations work together in concert, but that's where your voice can be especially loud, is when you do that as an organization.
And as I'm sure Adam can tell you, there is nothing that a legislative office likes less than getting phone calls.
That's true.
That
is true.
Hate it. They as you think, I mean, you could probably tell the stories better. The staff is often very young, completely uninformed, scared to death of actually having to talk to a constituent. Because what if they say the wrong thing? And then having to tell whoever their boss is, I just got 18 phone calls about something. Like nobody in that office wants that. All right, we'll take another question. Okay.
Thank you both for being here. You know, the uniqueness of the oath of office that you take as representatives, that we take as military officers, that enlisted soldiers take, is to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And the uniqueness is, it's to an ideal, the ideal of the Constitution. It's not to a monarch, it's not to a tyrant, it's not to a king. In addition to voting, how do we hold our elected officials up to that solemn, sacred promise that they took? Because they're not upholding it now.
I mean, look, it's kind of back to where we're at, is like everybody, when you take the oath, it's got to mean something to you. And so I would actually love to see when people run for office. By the way, if you live in a solid Republican district in Utah, vote in the primary, okay? Even if you're not a Republican, and hopefully, well, if there's a good candidate, a better candidate running. Oh, you guys have closed primaries? Okay. Weirdos? No,
but you know what we don't have? I'll tell you what we're lucky. We don't have fluoride in our water.
Oh, that's good. But I've got to say this, it's all voting, and also it's reminding people that they've taken an oath. Because I will tell you, as a guy that took 2 separate oaths, as a military officer and as a member of Congress, that does mean something to me. And it does weigh, I think, on everybody, but they have convinced themselves somehow that they're following the oath and remind them that they haven't. But look, obviously, it's between them and their creator, unfortunately, and ultimately the voter about whether or not they're following that oath. I think half of them aren't.
Well, and I would say this, back to the voter. In the 2022 midterm, turnout was 44%. Like, that is not going to get it done, gang. That is not going to get it done. If we can get it from 44 to 50, right, that's a game changer. In 2024, 71% of available races in this country, up and down the ballot, were unopposed, okay? Out of those races that ran unopposed, 3 out of 4 times it was a Democrat that didn't put anybody up, right? Like, guys, we cannot have that. We must compete. I get it. Utah's a red state. Carolina's proven that you can move needles, right? We must get involved. We must do this. And here's the thing. When you start to do that, as Adam was just talking about, as these things start to come together, all these tendrils start to come together, and something will happen. There will be a reaction. We don't know what it is, but I'll tell you this. Until and unless your former colleagues feel like they actually could lose, then they will continue to act like they're acting.
Yep.
All right. Who's next? Oh, okay. And then we'll come back to the front, because we got a bunch of folks up front.
Thank you both. God bless you both and everybody here. I feel so much less alone. Recommendation or segue off of your comment, Reed, on contacting our congressional delegation. There's a lot of messages that we could deliver. What are the 3 or the most effective? Is it Constitution, national security, fiscal issues? What's going to, given the nature of the Utah congressional delegation, what would you recommend that we focus on, and then maybe spin into an op-ed or letter to the editor? Thank you.
I don't know that, well, I don't think they care about the Constitution at this point. So I just don't know that that's effective. You know, it's hard, especially in Utah, because, I mean, look, in Summit County, right, I don't know if you know this, we have 2 state senators, 2 members of Congress, and 3 state legislatures. We have, what, 60,000 people in the county? Something like that? 4. Thank you.
You're the county they like to just...
Would they really, like, they love the money, they hate the people.
Yep.
That's pretty
Yep.
much it.
Yep.
And so, I would say this is that I think it's going to take a little while. I don't think we know it's going to work yet. And as I said, I don't think they feel any pressure. The only pressure they feel right now is from the guy sitting in the White House. That's the only pressure they feel.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll say this, if there's an area where you think kind of traditional Republicans would be on the right side of it, but they're not, so like Ukraine, that's a good one to hammer them on. Because like making sure not just that they're going to vote the right way and not that they're just going to reply to your letter and say, yes, I'll vote for Ukraine if it comes up. But every one of these members of Congress in a 2 or 3 vote majority of the House right now can actually shut down the entire House until they get Ukraine aid, for instance, right? Or like, we're not going to vote for this final whatever bill that, Donald Trump wants to put up unless we agree that, whatever on Ukraine. So I think finding those areas where you can kind of guilt them may be beneficial. But, what I was thinking of when we were just sitting here is like, if let's say like this was a meeting of the soon-to-be MAGAs, right? And which started out as the Tea Party, morphed into whatever, and then MAGA. And let's say it's 2012. And we're sitting around going, okay, how can we make this happen tomorrow? Well, you can't. Donald Trump's not going to come along for 4 more years and put accelerant on that fire, right? But it's the persistency that they had, which is what led to where we are today. And we have to think of that in countermeasure. We are now basically the insurgents in essence, and we're building this movement. And something may come along, or somebody may come along and pour fire and accelerate that. But that's what we have to be ready for.
Right, yes. Okay. Oh,
I got a
gentleman over there. And then I
question.
promise we're coming to you next.
I'd like to get your perspective on how Trump got elected. I scratch my
Which
head and I
time?
think there's a lot of idiots out there that voted for him, but he got the majority of the U.S. population to vote for him. How did he get elected?
All right. No, Donald Trump did not steal the election. He didn't. He won. But he won not because he got more votes. He won because Democrats stayed home.
Yeah.
That's why he won. Voter turnout plummeted 2020 over 2024, right? And it wasn't just, despite all the books that are coming out, should Biden have run again? He shouldn't have. But I actually call this the Apollo 13 election. Remember in Apollo 13, what caused the explosion was something that went wrong in a factory 2 years before the rocket ever took off, right? There was a problem inside both the Democratic Party and the electorate that too few of us were willing to confront, and too few of us really understood. And we were talking about this just a second ago, that they had Adam out a couple of times last year.
Totally underutilized.
Totally underutilized. And the thing that I saw at the doors, I was in the upper Midwest, I was in North Carolina, is that, look, why am I in a black neighborhood in Grand Rapids? I don't know, right? But I was there. That's where they asked me to go. And I'll tell you, most of those people I spoke to, they stayed home, right? If the guy who I talked to who had just gotten off work at noon on a Saturday said, well, the parties are just 2 sides of the same coin that both got snakes on them. I don't like Trump because he's all about himself. I guess I'll vote for Harris. She's the lesser of 2 evils. He didn't show up, right? Now, we multiply that by 250,000 times, there's your margin. This wasn't a blowout election. Those votes existed. And those people chose to stay home. They said, the system has failed. Guys, there is nothing more heartbreaking to me than somebody who waves a flag that says democracy all day, every day, right? And know that when I went to talk about democracy to people at the door, it didn't mean anything to them. You know why? Because for years, they had not seen their lives improve. I got to vote for this. If you don't vote, it's the end of the world. This is the most important election of our lifetime. If you don't vote for it, the world's going to get worse. Guy looks out his window, the world's worse, right? What am I supposed to, I'm not talking about the people in this room, right? I'm talking about the people for whom the system has forsaken them. And their choice was an angry vote for Donald Trump or a no vote because, you know what, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. And I'm going to say one more thing. There has been a problem in this country with, and this is, I'm going to blame us men for this. We are losing young men. Now, for a long time, there was this term toxic masculinity, which I hate the term. And now sometimes it's legitimate. Donald Trump, as an example, is toxically masculine, right? But everything masculine for 10 years was called toxic. And so young men came up in this world feeling like what they were and what they felt and what they believed was somehow toxic and wrong, and they felt completely disconnected. And Joe Rogan comes along, and Andrew Tate comes along and says it is okay to be masculine. And by the way, masculinity is tweeting in all caps. It's being a huge jerk. It's abusing women. That's what power and masculinity is. It's alpha male. We're going to create alpha male camps, right? And in contrast, the reality is masculinity is important. And what masculinity is defending the weak, punching up, not punching down, defending your family, providing for your family. These are all important masculine traits. Honor, right? Defending your country. But for whatever reason, the political system, yes, but men particularly have failed that generation of men. And that's why Democrats lost too. The young men voted for Donald Trump because he presented a version of masculinity that is not countered by a healthy version out there. And so that's going to be a long time fix, but that's what we have to be thinking about.
Can I just say one thing, just as an aside, as someone who's had a beard for many, many years, like Pete Buttigieg and Chris Murphy growing beards, like, dude,
It's not gonna do it.
Come on, it's not gonna do it. This does not make you like cool.
Sorry.
Right? Like it doesn't. You still got the comb, right? Like I'm sorry, like, you're not that cool. Okay, who's next? Amy. Oh yeah, Rager.
Thanks. Thank you for telling people to vote, to run for office. I ran for office 4 times in gerrymandered districts, twice in the legislature and twice for Congress. We need people to do that.
Good for you.
My question is, Congress has the power to stop some of the things that are going on right now. They can pass part of the budget and say, no, you cannot spend one dime to improve the Qatari Air Force One. You have to spend X $100 million and provide so many Patriot missiles and so many HIMARS missiles for Ukraine. And that can be put in the budget. Will they do it?
No, not this group. Nope.
No.
Now, 2026, maybe, if we can win the House.
But and I would also say, back in 2020, I was doing a tour of Hill Air Force Base, which got an F-35 wing, and they do a lot of refurbishment of A-10s. And we had a meeting with the base commander, and she was saying, this is 2020, that it's a massive base, and she had something like $300 million pulled out of her budget and pushed down to the border. And she's like, it's not just like, first of all, it's an incredible amount of money, but she's like, I still have to get the job done, right? And so this is the other part, is like, he's going to figure out how to, first of all, maybe the Qataris will just fix it up for him, and they can put all their bugs in it, right? The Russians will put their bugs in, the Chinese will put their bugs in, right? You'll need a can of Raid to get through that. But, this is one thing too, is I think we really have to get through the world we knew and live in the world we're in, which is they will find a way. They are already doing this, right? Like the things that we're seeing, I know I got a text from somebody about, habeas corpus. Okay, yes, the suspension of habeas corpus is bad. Nobody knows what that means, right? The suspension of habeas corpus means you get thrown in jail for any reason or no reason, right? And they'll say, well, Abraham Lincoln did it. Yes, he did, right? And it's in the Constitution. Yes, it is, right, guys? We have to talk like normal human beings, right? Like we cannot talk about these high-minded things. We have to attach something to the consequence that comes with it. And it might be that he's going to take a Qatari airplane, he's going to have the Air Force refitted, and that's what's going to happen. Again, not a lot we can do about it, but the money is there, and it's all locked up in the Treasury. And if you don't, let's be clear, like if they got to go print, $10 million, $100 bills to pay for it, they will.
Yep.
Right? Now, look, the mint's never been used for that. No, it hasn't, but it might be. All right, who's next? We got time for a couple more. Yes.
So, Adam, you mentioned it earlier about the us and them. What do you think the chances are that we're deep in a psyops war that's pulling the country apart as you're either far left or far right? Question one. And the second is a lot of 3 years from now, 10 years from now, really depends on the fact that we have this balance of power between 3 branches of the government. Do you think we're too far or close to being too far where those disappear?
So first off, yeah, I think we're in the middle of a psyop, and I think it's like all you have to do is look at Twitter, right, and the internet, I mean, I'm not saying this conspiracy-wise, but I'm saying there are interests out there that are seeking to tear us apart. Some of them are foreign actors, like Russia. Some of them are financial actors, right? Like, if I put out more outrageous stuff on my whatever, social media, I'll actually get more money because that evokes more response. And in the process, we have our country has been torn apart, right? Now, here's the good thing. You say, are we too far gone? I mean, it feels like it, right? But all I have to do is look through that 250 years of American history. There have been many times that felt too far gone. We went through a civil war. I mean, how would we ever come back from a civil war, right? We did. And America has always come back. And I think the fact that there's 400 people here, for instance, on a Wednesday, it's Wednesday, goes to show that you guys are fired up and interested in a better life. And I've always believed that if the American people say we demand and deserve a better life, they will get a better life. And there is going to be somebody, I don't know if it's a candidate or what, that comes along that helps to congeal that. But this is what we have to remember. There is no guy that's going to ride in on a white horse. There is no guy that's going to ride in. We've read the stories where there's always somebody that comes and saves us. It's us. We're the white horse guys now, okay? And that's actually pretty encouraging because we all have an opinion in here, which is we'd like to see a better country. We can make a better country. So I don't think we're too far gone, but I don't think it's automatic that we come back. And I think that's why the effort's so important. So thanks for the question.
Yeah, and a friend of mine I was interviewing a couple of weeks ago said, the arc of history will bend toward justice, but it doesn't do it by itself.
Yeah.
Right? Like you got to sort of stomp on it to get it to go where it's supposed to go. And I think there's a theme here, Adam, which is like, it's going to be us.
Yeah,
if we're going to do it, it's going to be us. It's not going to be waiting around hoping. It's not going to be the play possum. If they're just bad enough, people will come back to us. Like, there has to be something for people to go toward. And as you said, I was talking to somebody earlier today. Like, we don't treat our citizens very well.
Right.
Like, we don't treat ourselves very well. Like, we don't take care of them. We don't think that we don't pretend to care about them. And I think until and unless we have that countervailing force, that countervailing message that says, like, it's going to be different than this.
Yeah.
It can't just be, well, yeah, Doge is okay because there is waste, fraud, and abuse. Okay, fine, but that's not a winning message.
Yep.
Right? That's not. And I think the other part too, and I promise I'll shut up and we'll get one more question in here, is like we need to rekindle the belief in the country.
Yes.
I think a lot of us have let that lay fallow because, frankly, for a lot of us, it's really easy to be American. It doesn't ask much of you. Mm-hmm. You have everything at your disposal, very little responsibility, right? Other than, again, to the bills you got to pay, the family you have, whatever it is. But it doesn't take much to be an American. I mean, if you look at the citizenship test that new naturalized citizens have to take, how many of us would be able to pass it, right? And that's pretty upsetting. So, all right. One last question here, and then we'll happy to talk to folks.
Adam mentioned 2026. This is one thing that gives, November 2026 is one thing that gives me hope and maybe many others in this room. So based on history, should November 2026 give us hope that the House and Senate will be flipped and things will be, this craziness will halt or at least be slowed down?
Well, I'll just say, I think the House will go Democratic. The Senate's a tough map. He knows more about the horse race of the politics. But, yeah, I think it should give us hope. But here's the thing. It's going to be given to the Democrats more than likely because people are going to be sick of Trump. It's not going to be because the Democrats earned it. That's going to be a key. And by the way, one other thing to my Democratic friends is start winning the Bill Clinton voter back again, right? Let's win the middle class. Let's win the working class. I was always a pro-union Republican. There weren't many of us, but I was one of them. That's one, we should be winning the unions back again. And less focus on identity politics, more focus on unity politics in the middle class, I think.
So I would say this, is that you're right. On the natural, the Democrats should take the House next year. I think you're right about the Senate. I think that's tough. Here's, I think, though, one thing to the last gentleman's question, right? It's not an election like we've known before, right? It's not an election like we've known before. The Trump administration has already gutted all of the programs within places like the National Security Agency and DHS to get rid of foreign actors in our space. They've gotten rid of all of that, right? They have an incredibly efficient and effective means of communication that goes 24/7, 365. It never stops. It's always on message, right? If there's one thing I can say is that if we look a year from now and Democrats are +1 in the generic ballot, they're not going to take the House, right? The headwinds we have are not electoral only anymore. They are a lot more stuff. And this is, again, the last piece of advice probably for the evening we'll give to our Democratic friends. And this is why the union is doing what it does and what your Country First is doing. If you're only going to communicate with voters 8 weeks out of every 2 years, you are going to continue losing elections, right? If the people I'm talking to in October in Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin, have no information other than the fact that they know Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are running, that's it, we fail, right? It has to be a constant level of communication, a constant stream of communication at the local level where people live about the issues they care about. Look, we can sit up here and talk about NATO, right? NATO is a vanity issue, right? Like you worry about NATO if you're not worried about your mortgage, right? You worry about Ukraine if you're not worried about putting food on the table, right? Those are not issues. They are issues of great importance, but they are not the issues that are going to get sometime voters or disengaged voters out. And I'll tell you this, and I promise I'll shut up. This is not about policy. Elections are not about policy. They are about values. They are an argument about values. Whose value do I believe represents me more in this time? And if we can't figure out what our value system is, then we're not going to be able to convince those people to show up next year.
I want to make one quick point, because I don't know if I get a chance to talk again, as we're shutting down, but, you know, we all feel alone, right, in this. But I want you guys to really take into account the fact that you have 399 people around you that feel the same way. Maybe you guys don't agree on everything. My wife and I don't agree on everything, and we're married and we love each other, right?
Well, but we agree that you're wrong.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they do. Yeah, that's. I agree with that too. I have to. But if you look around and just look at your community here and kind of feel like that's a family. These are the people. This is the army we have to go to battle with, right? These are the people that we have to lean on when we're down, and people will lean on us when they're down. Because, like I said at the very beginning, the other side thrives on this chaos. It's like taking Adderall for them every time. For us, we get exhausted. So we're at a disadvantage. We're going to need each other. We're going to have to lean on each other. And so always keep that in mind. In 2 years, when we're sitting around discouraged, remember this meeting and this moment and these people, they're still going to be there. They're still going to have the same concerns you do.
All right. Before we get out of here, Adam, plug America, not America First, that's Donald Trump.
America First! Listen, so I'll just say real quick, after January 6th, I started this as a way to save the GOP. That obviously isn't happening. It quickly grew into what I call kind of democracy building at home. So take a look, country1st.com. We're doing a lot of cool stuff. The union's doing a lot of cool stuff. And you can be involved in both, frankly, and get some good stuff done.
Yeah, and I will make a pitch for the union as well. Please go to jointheunion.us or hold your phone up to that QR code. Help us out. This is the first of many of these kinds of events we're going to do. We'll be in Boise on Friday doing another one of these. I think we have Virginia on the books. I think we're going to maybe go to Illinois. We have a lot of these, but guys, we need your help to keep us moving and keep us on the road. Oh, don't go anywhere. I'm being told to sit down. Sit down. Hold on one second. So, oh yes. Do you need the microphone? Oh, wrap it up. I'm being told to wrap it up. Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Was this an amazing evening? Not a seat in this house was empty. There was overflow in the community center, and there are people online watching what happened here tonight on YouTube Live. That's amazing. Thank you. I hope that you walk away with three takeaways tonight from tonight's committee conversation. Number one, we're all in it together. That doesn't mean we agree on everything, maybe even most things. But it's so important to find some commonality with your neighbors. Whether it's baseball, tulips, dogs, music, fireworks, something. We may all be part of different communities, but we are also part of one big community. Number two, courage is contagious. All of our speakers have developed and have demonstrated powerful courage tonight. There's something about hearing their stories that makes us more courageous, to step out of our comfort zone and to do something to improve our community and our country. Start small and let it grow. And number three, taking talk to action. It's the tagline for tonight's program. So here it comes. Tonight, you have the opportunity to contribute in meaningful ways to the work of the community fair organizations here who are doing great work in Park City and Utah. If you're part of one of these groups, raise your hand. The League of Women Voters, Peace House, Utah Votes, and finally the newest group serving Summit County and Wasatch Counties, Proactive Alliance, started by Ann Curvin as she was recuperating from a knee injury. She couldn't sit by and do nothing. She gathered some friends, and they gathered more friends, and then boom, they are proactive and doing something. The reps from these organizations are going back to the community fair. Reed will join all of you after when he can get away. And of course, we would be remiss if we didn't toot our own horn just a bit. You know that the union was formed by former Republicans, but our membership spans the spectrum. We're inclusive, Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, or unaffiliated. We welcome anyone who wants to help to rebuild our democracy. We don't have a big party machine support, but we believe in volunteers like me and you who care and are courageous enough to take peaceful, positive actions. We have the message that resonates with most Americans. Though we formed a pro-democracy rule of law group, we have recently added decency and competency to our agenda. Join us at jointheunion.us and find out how to take action. Remember, we're all in this together, and courage is contagious. And you want to take talk into action, contact us. Thanks for coming. Drive, bike, or walk safe.